Park Min-ho sat alone in his apartment on the 42nd floor of the Seoul Tower complex, watching the city lights flicker below him like dying stars. He held a stone in his hand, a black go stone worn smooth from years of handling. His fingers traced the ancient marks carved into its surface. These marks told stories of games he had won and lost, of dreams he had abandoned, of a life that never quite became what he wanted it to be. The news on his screen played the same broadcast for the 100th time that day. The ships had arrived 3 hours ago. Not one ship, but hundreds. They hung in the sky above every major city on Earth like metal clouds. The broadcasts called them the Krell Collective. The beings inside were ancient, powerful, and they wanted to talk. Min-ho did not care about talking. He cared about the Go tournament he had abandoned 10 years ago. He cared about his brother Teo, who had needed him more than any game ever could. He cared about the many ways he had failed, and he cared very little about the future when the past still burned so fresh inside his chest. The message came through every network, in every language, spoken in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. We are the Krell Collective. We have traveled many solar systems. We have encountered many civilizations. We offer humanity a choice. You have one solar cycle, 1 year, to play a game called Tenkai. If you win, humanity continues. If you lose, humanity becomes part of the collective. You will serve, but you will survive. There is no third option. Min-ho turned off the broadcast and poured himself more coffee. The coffee was cold now, but he drank it anyway. Humanity was about to end or transform, and he was thinking about cold coffee and go stones. This seemed right somehow. The world had never cared about him, so why should he care about the world? 3 days later, there was a knock at his door. Min-ho had not opened that door in weeks. He looked through the screen to see who stood outside. A woman in a military uniform stood waiting. She had sharp eyes and a determined face. Her name tag read Kang Ji-woo, and her rank was captain. Min-ho did not open the door. "I know you don't want to see me," Ji-woo said to the closed door. "I don't care. The United Nations sent me here because they need you. Humanity needs you." "Go away," Min-ho said. His voice sounded strange to him, like it was coming from someone else's mouth. He had not spoken aloud in so long that his voice felt foreign. Ji-woo did not go away. Instead, she spoke louder. "Your name is Park Min-ho. You were the 7th-ranked Go player in the world. You won tournaments across Asia. Then, 10 years ago, you stopped playing. You disappeared from everything. But we know why. Your brother Teo, we know what happened. We know you blame yourself." Min-ho heard something in her voice. Not pity, not sympathy. Something harder than that. Something that sounded like truth. "If you don't open this door in the next 5 seconds," Ji-woo continued, "I will open it myself. I have authorization. 1, 2, 3. Min-ho opened the door. He had nothing left to fight with, and somehow that made him ready to fight for something. Ji-woo stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She looked around the apartment with eyes that saw everything, the empty bottles, the unwashed clothes, the Go board that still held pieces from a game played weeks ago. Her face did not show disgust or pity. It showed something more useful. Recognition. She had seen failure before. She had seen people breaking down, but she had also seen people get back up. "The Krell want to play a game called Tenkai," she said, sitting down without being asked. "No one on Earth knows how to play it. Our scientists have tried to understand the rules from the limited information the Krell gave us. No one can figure it out. No one except you." "I don't play games anymore," Min-ho said. "Everyone plays games," Ji-woo said. "You just stopped playing the ones with boards and stones. But life is a game, Min-ho. War is a game. Economics is a game. All the strategies you use to master," They work everywhere. We need you to remember that. Minho sat down across from her. He felt tired in a way that sleep could not fix. Why me? There are millions of people smarter than me. Millions of people who believe in humanity. Why pick the broken one? Because, Jiwoo said, leaning forward, you understand something that smart people don't. You understand sacrifice. You understand loss. You understand what it feels like to fail completely and still wake up the next morning. The people we would normally choose for this, they don't know those things. They believe they will win because they are clever. They will lose against the Krell because cleverness alone is not enough. There was something in the way she said it that made Minho listen. She was not trying to convince him. She was simply telling him what was true. Dr. Lee Tae-sung will be leading the effort, Jiwoo continued. He's a good man. He wants to help. But he needs you to teach him something. He needs you to teach all of us something about the human mind that machines cannot calculate. What thing? Minho asked. Desperation, Jiwoo said simply. Hope that has nowhere left to go. Creativity that comes from having nothing to lose. These things might be the only advantage we have. Minho looked at the Go board with its old game still waiting to be finished. He had started that game but never completed it. Like so much of his life, it sat abandoned, waiting for someone brave enough to make the next move. If I do this, he said slowly, if I help you and Dr. Lee Tae-sung, I need to know something. I need to know that what happened to my brother will matter, not in some grand way about saving humanity, but that his life and his death will be remembered as important. Jiwoo stood up and put a piece of paper on the table. It had a single name written on it, Tae-o Park. Below the name were the words, remembered, honored, avenged through the survival of his world. Minho picked up the paper and held it. He felt something shift inside him, like a stone rolling away from a place it had blocked for so long. When do we start? He asked. Jiwoo smiled, and for the first time Minho saw warmth in her military face. Tomorrow, she said. The real game begins tomorrow. Tonight you should rest, and maybe think about finishing that Go game. After she left, Minho looked at the board again. He picked up a white stone and moved it to the empty space where it belonged. The game was not finished, but at least it could move forward now. And perhaps that was all that any of them could do, move forward, even when the outcome was uncertain. The academy stood in the heart of Neo-Seoul, hidden inside what used to be an old military complex. The building had been transformed in just 72 hours into something that looked like a cross between a research laboratory and a game hall. Minho walked through the corridors with Jiwoo, still not quite believing that he was here. Around them, scientists in white coats moved with urgent purpose. Large screens displayed strange symbols and game boards that meant nothing to him. Dr. Lee Tae-sung waited in the central chamber. He was a thin man with white hair and eyes that looked tired but intelligent. When he saw Minho, he stood up and bowed with deep respect. This surprised Minho more than anything else that had happened since Jiwoo found him in his apartment. Thank you for coming, Dr. Lee said simply. Humanity's survival now rests on you. I know that is a heavy thing to carry. Minho bowed back, though he was not sure why. The gesture felt right. I don't know if I can help, he said. I don't know anything about this Tenkai game. Neither do we, Dr. Lee replied. But we have something. The Krell gave us a teaching interface. They are not trying to hide the game from us. They believe their game is so superior to our thinking that they can teach us openly. Let me show you what we have learned. He walked Minho to a large circular table. On it was a holographic board, a three-dimensional structure that glowed with soft blue light. It was unlike any game board Minho had ever seen. The pieces were not simple shapes. They seemed to move with their own energy, shifting colors and positions based on what was happening around them. The board has 7 levels, Dr. Lee explained. Up here is the physical level. Down here is the spiritual level. There are 5 levels in between that represent different aspects of society. The pieces are called resonators. Each one represents an entire civilization in miniature. A scientist named Park Hyun-jun stepped forward with a tablet. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with an intense focus in her eyes. "The piece movements are not fixed," she said. "Unlike chess, where a knight always moves like a knight, these pieces change their abilities based on something the Corel call harmony. If a piece is surrounded by pieces of the same type, it becomes stronger. If it is surrounded by different pieces, it can do unique things." Min-ho studied the board. Something about it felt familiar to him, though he could not place why. Then it came to him. It was like Go, the game he had loved his whole life. In Go, stones did not move, but the strength of each stone came from its relationship to other stones. A single stone could be strong or weak, depending on its neighbors, depending on the pattern, depending on what the opponent did next. "This is not a game of perfect information," Min-ho said slowly. "In chess, you can see all the pieces. In Go, you can also see all the stones. But this game, the harmony between pieces, is not something you can calculate. You have to feel it." Dr. Lee's face lit up with hope. Yes, exactly. We have been trying to use mathematics to solve it. We have been trying to use computers. But every simulation fails. The game seems to respond differently to different players. It is not just strategy. It is something else." "It is about the player," Min-ho said. He was beginning to understand now. "The Krell are testing us. They are testing whether we can think like them, but also whether we can think in ways they cannot." Over the next 2 weeks, Min-ho worked with Dr. Lee and the team to understand Tenkai. He brought in artists and musicians to help them understand harmony. He brought in soldiers to help them understand conflict. He brought in poets to help them understand emotion. Slowly, a picture began to form. Tenkai was a game where you could win through logic, but you could also win through chaos. You could win through strength, but you could also win through weakness. Every principle in the game had an opposite principle that was equally valid. It was a game designed by beings who thought they had perfected logic, but who had actually created something much more complex, a system that required understanding emotion to truly master. Ji-woo worked beside him the entire time. She was not a game player, but she had something else, the ability to see patterns in human behavior. When Min-ho was stuck, she would ask him questions that seemed simple but led him in new directions. Why do people sacrifice? Why do they hope? Why do they believe in things they cannot see? These questions were not about strategy, but they were everything about how the game worked. One night, after everyone else had left the academy, Min-ho and Ji-woo sat alone with the holographic board. Min-ho was exhausted. They had been working for 18 days straight, and his mind felt like it was breaking apart. "I don't know if I can do this," he said quietly. "The Krell have been playing this game for 10,000 years. How can I learn it in 2 weeks?" Ji-woo smiled. It was a rare expression on her face. "You already know how to play it," she said. "You learned it when you were learning to lose. You learned it when you were in your apartment drinking cold coffee and being broken. The game is not about being perfect. It is about understanding yourself so completely that your opponent becomes predictable." "The architect," Min-ho said. "That is what they called the one who leads the Krell. That is who I will have to face." "Yes," Ji-woo said. "But here is something important. The architect has won every single game for 10,000 years, and I think it is tired of winning." Min-ho looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Ji-woo said, "that I have been reviewing the reports from First Contact. The architect chose to come to Earth personally. The architect could have sent anyone. But it came. And when our scientists explained that humans play games for fun, not just for dominance, the architect asked us to teach it about Go. It asked us about a game with no winner and no loser. Just the beauty of perfect strategy. Something shifted in Minho's understanding. The architect might be powerful and ancient, but it was also curious about something it did not have. That was a weakness. That was a place where a broken man from Seoul might actually stand a chance. "When do I play?" Minho asked. 5 days, Jiwoo said. "The whole world is watching. The whole world is hoping. But Minho, you should know something. Win or lose, you have already changed how we think about this. You have already shown us that strategy is not just about being smart. It is about being human." Minho nodded and went back to studying the board. His fingers traced the harmonic patterns, and for the first time in 10 years, he felt something that was not quite hope, but was close to it. He felt the beginning of something. And sometimes, that is all a person needs to keep moving forward. The grand arena existed in a space that Minho's mind could barely understand. It was not on Earth and not quite on the Krell station either. The Krell had created a space between spaces, a neutral ground where the game would be played. Billions of humans watched from screens across the world. Scientists, children, soldiers, and ordinary people all sat together in the darkness of their homes, waiting to see if a broken man from Seoul could somehow save them all. Minho wore a simple white shirt and black pants. His hands were steady, but his heart was moving too fast. Jiwoo had walked with him to the entrance of the arena, and when he turned to say goodbye, she grabbed his arm. "Remember," she said, "you don't have to be the smartest. You just have to be the most honest." He did not understand what she meant, but he nodded anyway. Then he walked forward into the chamber where the architect waited. The architect was not what Minho expected. He had thought it would be something alien and terrible. Instead, it was elegant in a way that made his heart hurt. It was tall, with a body that seemed to be made of liquid light. Its eyes were deep and ancient, and when it looked at Minho, he felt like it was looking at 10,000 years of games and victories and endless loneliness. "I am the architect," it said. Its voice did not come from a mouth. It came from everywhere. "You are Park Minho. You have come to play Tenkai. Do you understand that your entire civilization hangs in the balance of this game?" "I understand," Minho said, "but I don't know if I care." This surprised the architect. Its form rippled like water. "Explain." "I have already lost everything I cared about," Minho said. "My brother died because I was not there. My dreams died because I stopped trying. My world has already ended many times in many ways. So winning or losing this game, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I can only play it because I have nothing left to lose." The architect was silent for a long moment. Then it said, "That is a good answer. Sit." They sat across from the holographic board. Minho looked at the 7 levels of the game and felt something settle inside him. He understood now. The architect was testing whether humans were worth saving. But Minho was testing something too, whether a being that had won for 10,000 years would know what to do when it finally faced someone who had nothing. The first move belonged to the architect. It placed a warrior piece in the center of the physical level with perfect mathematical precision. The piece glowed with confidence. Minho played his first move. He placed a dreamer piece in a corner of the board. It made no strategic sense. It was surrounded by empty space. A computer would say it was a waste. But when he placed it there, the piece began to glow with soft light, creating harmonics that stretched across the entire board. The architect hesitated. This was the first time in 10,000 years that its opponent had done something unexpected from the first move. The game continued. Move after move. The architect played with perfect logic. It controlled territory. It built positions of unbeatable strength. Its pieces created geometric patterns that were beautiful in their symmetry. But each time the architect placed a piece, Minho responded not with more logic, but with a kind of emotional intuition. He placed pieces not where strategy said they should go, but where something deeper, something human, told him they needed to be. The audience watched in confused silence. The commentators were experts in board games, but they could not explain what was happening. The architect's moves were clearly superior in every way. Minho's moves seemed almost random, and yet somehow the architect could not gain the kind of victory it usually achieved. By move 100, something strange began to happen. The architect's perfect position started to create vulnerabilities. Its symmetry became a weakness. Because everything the architect did was so perfectly logical, Minho began to predict not the next move, but the pattern behind it. And because he could predict it, he could respond to it in ways that confused the ancient being. Minho began to see what the architect had never understood. Logic was predictable, but emotion, even carefully used emotion, contained infinite possibility. A person motivated by love could make a move that no calculator would ever consider. A person motivated by honor could sacrifice pieces that logic said must be saved. And a person motivated by the need to protect others could find strategies that served purposes beyond winning the game itself. By move 200, the architect's face, if it could be said to have a face, began to show something. Not quite concern, but something close to it. The being that had won 10,000 times in a row was beginning to understand that it might, impossibly, be facing something it could not simply calculate into victory. Minho made move 245. It appeared to be a mistake. His sovereign piece, the most important piece in Tenkai, was left completely undefended. The architect could capture it in 2 moves and win the game immediately. The architect made the capture. And then, something extraordinary happened. What had appeared to be a mistake was not a mistake at all. It was a trap so subtle that the architect's logic could not see it until it was too late. In the next 11 moves, Minho's position revealed itself like a flower blooming. Each of the architect's victory moves became a chain reaction that tied its pieces into positions where they could not move. By move 256, the architect had no valid moves left. It could not move without destroying its own position. The architect was silent. The board hung in the blue light, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the ancient being that had never lost a game found itself completely defeated. "I concede," the architect said softly. "You have won, Minho of Earth. Your civilization has the right to live free." The arena erupted. Screens across the world showed the moment. A single human had defeated the greatest strategist in the known galaxy. But Minho felt no triumph. Instead, he felt something different. He felt sad for the architect. He felt the weight of the burden that creature had carried for 10,000 years. He felt the loneliness of always winning. The architect looked at him across the board. "Come," it said. "Come speak with me. There is something you should understand about what just happened and what it means for both of us." As Minho rose to walk toward the ancient being, Jiwoo's words came back to him. "You don't have to be the smartest. You just have to be the most honest." He had won the game, but somehow he knew that was only the beginning. The architect had revealed a truth that changed everything. Victory against one being meant nothing. The Krell Collective was governed by 7 overseers, each one controlling a different domain. Each one was powerful in its own way. Each one played a different version of Tenkai. And if Minho wanted humanity to truly be free, he would have to win against all 7. Earth celebrated for exactly 3 days before the weight of this new reality settled onto the planet like a heavy snow. Minho received the message while sitting in a small room at the academy. The first challenge would come in 10 days. His opponent would be Vorath, the overseer of war. Jiwoo found Minho staring at a blank board. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "I don't know," Minho said. "The architect told me something strange. It said that each overseer plays a different way because they value different things. Vorath values dominance. The second overseer, Seldra, values knowledge. If I have to beat 7 beings who think in completely different ways, I don't know how to prepare." Jiwoo sat down beside him. "Then we change how we prepare. Before, we taught you strategy. Now, we teach you compassion. You need to understand each overseer. You need to understand what they want, what they fear, what they have lost. Then you can beat them." This was a different kind of training. Minho spent time with historians who explained Krell society. He spent time with psychologists who talked about different personality types. He spent time with artists and musicians and ordinary people, learning to understand the hidden motivations that drove beings to do what they did. When Vorath came, it attacked Minho's position like a storm. The overseer of war played with aggressive force, moving pieces forward with brutal efficiency, destroying everything in its path. Vorath did not care about beautiful strategy. It cared only about victory through overwhelming force. Minho understood something about Vorath in that moment. This being had spent 10,000 years winning through strength. It had never learned any other way to play. So when Minho played with a patience that would not fight force with force, Vorath became confused. Minho moved slowly, deliberately, protecting his weak pieces and letting Vorath's aggressive advances exhaust themselves. By the end, Vorath's powerful position had no support, no harmony. Minho won through controlled restraint. 1 victory became 2, then 3, then 5. Seldra, the overseer of knowledge, tried to overwhelm Minho with information. It placed pieces based on probability calculations and predictions so complex that they seemed like magic. But Minho learned from the architect's failure. Logic was powerful, but it was also predictable. He introduced deception into his game. He made moves that seemed wrong, but served hidden purposes. Seldra, trained to believe in data and numbers, could not account for choices that did not make mathematical sense. Morven, the overseer of harmony, played with perfect balance. Every piece was placed to create symmetry, to maintain peace, to create a board state that was beautiful and neutral. Minho beat Morven by breaking the symmetry. He showed that sometimes harmony requires breaking the pattern, that balance is not always about maintaining equality, that true peace sometimes requires sacrifice and change. With each victory, Minho grew stronger, but also more tired. The games took everything from him, all his emotional energy, all his spiritual strength. Between games, he would sit alone and simply breathe. Jiwoo would sit with him, not saying anything, just being present in the darkness. After the 5th victory, Minho told her something that had been growing in his heart. "I think I understand now why the architect asked me to come speak with it. When I won the first game, I felt sad for the architect. I felt how lonely it must be to win all the time. And now, with each victory, I feel that same loneliness. The more I win, the more separated I become from everyone else. The weight is heavy." "That is the price of being exceptional," Jiwoo said. "That is the cost of being human in a situation where humanity matters so much." "But I don't want to be exceptional," Minho said. "I just want to play the game." "I know," Jiwoo replied. "But you cannot choose what you are. You can only choose how to carry it." Case was the overseer of creation. It built structures on the board that were incredible to see, pieces arranged into patterns of such complexity that they took Minho's breath away. The structures were magnificent and apparently unbeatable, but Minho learned something important from studying human destruction. Sometimes the only way to win is to understand that all structures, no matter how perfect, contain the seeds of their own collapse. He moved with precision, removing single pieces from Case's structures until everything came crashing down. Threll, the overseer of erosion, played defensively. Every move was meant to protect, to preserve, to conserve resources. Threll seemed invulnerable, protected behind walls and barriers. Minho beat Threll by showing that true survival sometimes requires risk, that protecting everything means protecting nothing, that sometimes you have to gamble everything to save what truly matters. After the 7th game, Minho was barely conscious. He had won against all of them. All 7 overseers had been defeated. But there was one more game coming. The architect was asking for a rematch. And this time, Minho understood the architect would not hold back. This time, the being would play its true best game. Minho sat in a quiet room, and he finally let himself cry. He cried for his brother. He cried for the weight of the world. He cried for the fact that he had been forced to become something more than human when he had only wanted to be left alone. And he cried because deep inside, in a place he had hidden from himself, he knew that the true game had only just begun. Jiwoo found him that way. She did not try to comfort him. She sat beside him and cried too, for the price of victory, for the cost of survival, and for the strange friendship that had grown between a broken man and a woman who refused to let him stay broken. The second match between Minho and the architect began in silence. This time, there was no roaring crowd. The Krell themselves had requested silence from the observing worlds. This game was about something deeper than dominance. This game was about truth. The architect moved first. It placed its dreamer piece in the center of the board, exactly as Minho had done in their first game. Minho understood immediately. The architect was not just playing against Minho anymore. The architect was playing with Minho. It was trying to show him something. Move after move, the architect made decisions that seemed to mirror human strategy. When Minho moved aggressively, the architect responded with aggression. When Minho moved with patience, the architect showed patience. The game became a conversation between two different kinds of intelligence. And through the game itself, the architect told a story. The story was ancient. 10,000 years ago, the Krell were different. They felt emotions. They created art. They made decisions based on love and fear and hope, just like humans. But then they decided that emotions were inefficient. They decided that the universe would make more sense if they removed feeling entirely. They underwent a transformation, slowly changing themselves into beings of pure logic. The transformation worked. They became smarter. They became more powerful. They could calculate anything. They could predict outcomes that other civilizations could not even imagine. But something died inside them. The Krell became perfect, and perfection turned out to be a kind of prison. As the game progressed, the architect revealed something else. The testing of other civilizations through Tiankai was not an act of conquest. It was an act of desperation. The Krell were searching for something. They were looking for a species that could teach them what they had lost. They were looking for beings who could think in ways that transcended pure logic. They were looking for humans. By move 200, the game had become something beautiful and strange. The board was no longer a battleground. It was a canvas. The pieces created patterns that had meaning beyond winning or losing. The architect was not trying to defeat Minho. It was trying to communicate with him. Minho understood what was happening. He understood that the architect had wanted him to win from the beginning, but it also understood that if it simply allowed him to win, the victory would be hollow. So instead, it was showing him something. It was showing him that the Krell were not enemies. They were beings suffering from a choice they had made a long time ago, a choice they could never take back. On move 250, the architect did something unprecedented. It placed its final sovereign piece in a position of complete vulnerability. It was not a trap. It was an offering. The architect was surrendering not just the game, but the entire purpose of the Krell. Minho stared at the board for a long time. He could win now. He could end this. But he understood that winning in that way would be a tragedy. So instead, he made a move that changed everything. He placed his pieces in a way that protected the architect's vulnerable sovereign. He built harmony between their pieces. He created a board state where both players were simultaneously winning. It was a configuration that should not exist in Tainkai. Both players were achieving victory at the same time. The architect was silent. Its form, usually so controlled, began to ripple and change. And then, for the first time in 10,000 years, the architect did something it had not done since its transformation. It felt something. It felt sadness and joy and relief and fear all at the same time. It felt emotion. A sound came from the architect. It was not a voice. It was something deeper. It was the sound of a being remembering what it meant to be alive in more than just a physical sense. Other Krell watching the game began to make the same sound. Keseval, the young Krell who had been studying humans for months, began to weep, actual tears streaming down its face, something no Krell had done in 10,000 years. The architect spoke to Minho, and its voice was different now. It was soft, almost broken. "You have given us a gift," it said. "You have shown us that winning through force is not the only way to win, that sometimes the greatest victory is in choosing not to destroy your opponent, that humanity is not about being perfect. It is about being whole." Minho felt tears on his own face. "I don't know if we can help you," he said. "I don't know if humans are capable of teaching beings like you to feel again." "You already have," the architect said. "You have shown us that emotion is not weakness. You have shown us that a being broken by the world can still choose to care. You have shown us that sacrifice and hope and love are not computational errors. They are the purpose of existence." The architect did something then that shocked the entire Krell collective. It bowed to Minho. It was a gesture of respect, but it was also a gesture of surrender. The architect was acknowledging that humanity, in all its broken and beautiful imperfection, had something that the Krell had lost. Back on Earth, people watched as the game concluded. At first, they did not understand what had happened. They waited for the announcement of victory, but the announcement never came. Instead, what came was something more important. The Krell Collective announced a new era. They would begin the process of reintegrating emotion into their species. They would ask for help from humanity. They would send teachers and students to Earth, and Earth would send ambassadors to the Krell. Humanity had not just won the game. Humanity had changed the course of two civilizations. Minho walked out of the arena into the light of stars he had never seen before. Ji-Woo was waiting for him. She ran to him and embraced him, and for the first time in years, Minho felt like he could truly breathe again. The weight was still there, but it was no longer crushing him. It was simply the weight of being human, of being part of something bigger than himself.